The United States Department has barred the Speaker of Parliament, Anita Among, and 7 other Ugandan officials from entering the United States after issuing sanctions against them of alleged corruption and gross violation of human rights. The other officials include the Minister of State for Finance, Amos Lugolobi, former Minister of Karamoja Affairs, Mary Goretti Kitutu, former Minister of State for Karamoja Affairs, Agnes Nandutu, former Deputy Chief of Defense Forces, Peter Elwelu, and among others, Amonga's husband, Moses Magogo. The U.S. sanctions come just weeks after similar sanctions by the United Kingdom government against Among, Nandutu, and Kitutu. Tonight we look at the implication of these sanctions, and later we shall discuss other issues that are currently dominating public discourse in the country. My guests this evening include an international relations and security consultant, Mr. Simon Mulongo, and the Busiro East Member of Parliament, Honorable Medard Segona. Honorable Medard Segona and the Honorable Simon Mulongo, thank you so much, gentlemen, for having honored our invitation. A warm welcome to both of you.
Many thanks and good evening to you, Patrick, and our viewers out there.
And thank you so much for yet another opportunity to meet my MCO and to meet you again, and for the good viewers.
Thank you. So let me begin with you, Honorable Medard. You are a legislator, you are a lawyer, you are, a man of substance. What does that mean for a development partner to issue sanctions? Or let me begin it this way. In 1986, when President Yoweri Museveni came to you here as president, he had a 10-point program. And the point number 7 was the fight against corruption, to eliminate corruption. But now, allegations are that corruption is so close to the fountain of honor 40 years later. What do you make of this?
First, has corruption ever been far from the presidency for as long as the NRM has reigned? I would answer that in the negative. That said, first and foremost, is I feel for those people that have been sanctioned by both the United States and the United Kingdom, or by any other country in future. Who knows? The announcement of sanctions is an act of sovereignty by a sovereign state saying, please do not come closer to us for whatever reasons that may be given. And it is perfectly within their right. 2 issues. One is substantive justice, and the second is procedural justice to those that are sanctioned. Substantively is about the substance of the allegation. First, I do not know whether it is true these people are corrupt or not. I would be the happiest person to have every corrupt person sanctioned and punished even harder. For every person that violates rights to be sanctioned and punished even harder. I'm one of those that have spoken against the abuse of human rights and abuse of public office. Peter Elwelu, my friend, was actually Commander Land Forces when we experienced the debacle in Kasese, where the army, and I want to say Museveni's army, as he calls it, invaded the palace of Msingawa Renzururu and massacred people in what could have been avoided simply because they had disagreements and arguments against each other's stand. Musinga wa Rwenzururu, Charles Wesley Mumbere, was incarcerated together with many others, some of whom died in prison, on top of those that were massacred in the palace. And we kept complaining against that vice. We thought there would be an investigation against Peter. It didn't take place. Instead, he was promoted. Probably the master, his commander-in-chief, was satisfied and happy with the job. So if you're sanctioning anybody for abuse of rights, that is the right candidate to start with.
Let me first
I'm only appalled
yes.
that the United States, for human rights, have not sanctioned themselves. They have not sanctioned all those people that have been involved in gross atrocities. Where is this man called Kabango who killed people in Kasubi after the burning of the royal tombs? All these soldiers that have been masquerading and marauding around killing citizens ought to have been sanctioned. Now, on the point of corruption, first and foremost, I stand with all those that stand against corruption. How many people were involved? Because we've been told that it's about the iron sheets. But we have a huge list, starting with the vice president and so many other ministers. It's a list of over 90 public officials. We've not seen them sanctioned. I want to see them sanctioned.
Let me turn to the Honorable Simon.
No.
Yes.
This was in the Prime Minister's office. Where is the Prime Minister on the list?
We're going to get
and she's my friend, for the record. Where is the Vice President? Let's look at Dr. Kasese told you. He said, we know how we came. One shot, tattered, probably stolen from somebody as you were marching to Kampala. They own the entire city. They own streets in Europe. How many have been sanctioned? I want to see all those suspects sanctioned.
Okay, you want more. Let me more individuals on that list. The Honorable Simon Mulongo, I just want to paraphrase the same question I put to the Honorable Medad Segona. Because the commander-in-chief, the president of the Republic of Uganda, when he came to power in 1986, he came with 10 points. In fact, they called it the 10-point program.
What did Museveni tell you when they almost killed the Kyagulanyi in Arua?
Just a moment. He came with 10 points, and he called it a 10-point program. You are a card of the revolution. The point number 7, Mr. Simon Mulongo, was about fighting and ending corruption. Almost 40 years down the road, it looks like the hydra-headed kind of corruption is closer to the fountain of honor because the speaker who is facing these allegations is actually number 3 in the hierarchy. What do you make of this?
Yeah, first of all, there are 2 or so elements here. The first one is that even in government, we concede that corruption is a big challenge. And it's a big challenge because of its nature. It takes 2 to tango. And when you have people still wanting to buy their way out, and the offer, whatever the offer for corruption purposes, then it becomes very difficult because of that collusion. So corruption can become very fluid because of that. And it's not just in Uganda alone, but everywhere. So it is a vice, it is a cancer that we admit that there is, but of course, there are measures that have been put in place, whether legal or administrative, but those measures somehow are not as effective as we would have wanted. So I don't think this is a deliberate thing, simply because people came with a single shot that is started and now they own some property. The issue is how best we can handle this together, including the members of the opposition who point at this, but also some people point at them. So I think it is a disease that we all have to join hands to. The second point is who is issuing these sanctions and why? And I want to agree with the Honorable Segona that this is extremely suspicious because there is no due process. We don't know how they even came up with that decision. How did they arrive at that conclusion? Whom did they Why did they decide to target so and so and not the others? So the whole thing is very suspicious.
So your problem is that because that list is not long?
No, the problem is
that the issue now?
There is no due process. They do the things behind the curtains, and they come to issue those sanctions, which sanctions, to me, have no significant meaning, because they can't as well be as effective. Because look at the people being sanctioned. They don't run corporations in America or the UK. They don't have business entities in those countries or such levels of investment that is going to hurt them. That's not, because these are people who, in terms of the Western economics, they are non-quantities. And as such, really, I don't know. To me, the end is that they want to hurt.
But you are also aware on the issue of allegation of stealing from the most vulnerable, the Mabate issue, that ministers in this cabinet had to go to jail. You also know that as recently as about 2-3 weeks, there was what they called a parliamentary exhibition. It showed some kind of rot. But you also know for sure that the king or the Musinga of Rwenzururu had to leave his kingdom to come here, and people were killed in Kasese.
No.
Thanks. You cannot say as if that nothing happened, that there's no, as if there's nothing happened. Something happened.
I can tell you that some sentiments are whipped for purposes of inspiring some reaction from either the population or some communities. Because when they use the word like from the poor, from the impoverished communities, how much have we suffered from similar challenges from the West, where they target the poor people in this country?
Two wrongs don't make it right. Two wrongs don't make it right.
But let's
we know northeastern Uganda is impoverished.
Exactly.
And that's why they were buying the iron sheets to help the impoverished.
Exactly. Who was buying the iron sheets? Who was buying the iron sheets? Who budgeted for those iron sheets? Who was delivering those iron sheets? And whose budget was it? Let me tell you, we were the people who budgeted for the things, planned for the delivery, and discovered the ills, that there were some shortcomings here, that something had gone wrong with the iron sheets. And then after the whistleblowing, we acted. People were arrested, people were incarcerated, people were charged in courts of law. Of course. So
there was a crime was committed.
Yes.
And you acted.
Yes.
So they are also following this crime.
They're not following. In fact, when you look at the principle of double jeopardy, if people, the Honorable Nandutu and Honorable Kitutu are in the courts of law, okay? So what is this sanction about? What kind of double suffering would they want these people to suffer? The whole thing is that we believe there are some underlying things, reasons for it. And these underlying reasons are not just being spoken out. But let's come to the King Mumbere. I remember very well King Mumbere, before he returned, I was quite involved in that issue of the debate of whether King Mumbere should come back from America or not. And we pushed, and some schools of thought in Kasese were against him. But for us, we insisted, after we had done some survey, that actually about 60% of the people in Kasese wanted the king back. And so we really pushed for his return. And when he returned, he started building some state-related ambitions, including issues of sovereignty, some of which had been some ideas from his dad.
Issues of secession.
Yes, secession. And the issue even wanted to begin infatuating ideas of sovereignty and the currencies and all this, and building up a force, a fighting force. And I remember I went to see King Mumbere a couple of times to engage him. And for him, he felt that the president was an equal, and that he was mistreating him as if he was lesser. And indeed, he started recruiting and training. And as he's training, when our military soldiers went there, the generals, they were meant to kneel down. They were disarmed, as if they're going to another, sovereign state. You remember those things very well. And just a minute. Just a minute. And soon after that, when we sent the police there, you know what happened? The running battles, the butchering of the police. So how many did we lose? A very big number. And so if you go to a number of sub-counties in those areas that had trained in this forces...
justification of turning the palace of Mumbere into some kind of a meat grinder?
It is not just a justification. But I think whether the approach was commensurate or not, that's another question. But I can tell you, there was a cause for reaction from government. There was a cause for it. And I know it's because the government did not come out with the immediate strategy to bring these things, all the things to light. Whether they used excessive force, that's another matter. But I can tell you,
but you know,
it was very provocative, very provocative.
But you know, from the trained officers who were engaging those militants or the guards of the king, there was no reason to turn that palace into a human meat grinder.
I tell you, I went there the last minute just to employ the king. And I tell you, the roadblocks were like 6, just about 100 meters, to check you thoroughly before you meet the king. I would talk to the king, and the guards were all over with machetes and all this. So I think the situation was very provocative. And the tendency to want to show secession, secessionist tendencies and all this definitely could have boiled down to a wrong way. We can talk about...
I think, Honorable Morongo, with all respect, you're provoking the people of Kasese.
I'm not provoking. I love the people of Kasese. They are my good friends and so on, but I want us to balance...
You cannot say...
Let's balance.
You cannot say, yes, the situation was tense, even if it was provocative, but to be, for people to be more down. For people to be more down like they did.
Don't put words in my mouth. I haven't said those things. I'm telling you that the situation was provocative. And how things were done, we can also look at that. But I can tell you it was very provocative.
Let me come back to the legislator.
First of all, I'm very, very disappointed that wild allegations and fabrications could be made. Because they said this man was a rebel, he was training, he was arming people. And after the massacre and burning down the man's palace, all they displayed was the usual regalia associated with the cultural institutions. The spears, which were there, the shields, so on and so forth. That's all we saw. It is also not factual that King Mumbere was, as he's putting the picture, painting the picture, that they massacred police officers. It's certainly not true. We were in Uganda. If I asked him for the list and numbers of those police officers who were killed, he cannot provide any, because it didn't happen. Yes, we understand that the situation was tense. There were disagreements, there were arguments for and against. But let's even ask questions. You see, I have a duty to scrutinize government, because one, I pay them taxes to protect Ugandans and not to kill them. Two, to do justice. Let's even assume King Mumbere had sensational tendencies. First of all, to think about it is not criminal. What happened now, after charging him and presenting him to court? They did not even go to the level of disclosure of evidence. After killing Ugandans, after detaining those people, the government could not even prove the charge. They simply wanted to bring him down to his knees. Secession itself is not desirable. Actually, we should be talking about bringing Africa together. It's not a desirable thing. But it's not even criminal. I want to go the other side. I want to be alone. I am tired of you, is an expression. And that freedom is protected by the Constitution. Look at Article 29. That's point number one. Point number two. He's painting that picture. I have a photographic memory of how King Mumbere was escorted out of the palace by a gentleman, an OBO of mine called Asuman Mugenyi. who was director of something, operations or something. He went and talked to him. After exiting King Mumbere, they burnt down the palace. That's when they started the massacre. They killed everybody. In getting him out of the palace, there was no resistance. It was very easy for people who have basic common sense, elementary, to go and surround the palace, cut off electricity, cut off water, and then tell people, surrender. Because you have surrounded, you're armed. 3, if you have an army and a police that do not have basic intelligence to even know what is in the palace, including in terms of ammunition, since they are sensationalizing ammunition. This is a person who was guarded by the UPDF. So they knew who was inside, what was inside. Because the people armed with guns who were protecting King Mumbere were UPDF under command and control. The rest were these cultural people, Bamboa. So, for me, that massacre, I would have loved to see many people sanctioned. By the way, I am not against sanctions. I am looking and scrutinizing the manner of sanctioning, how many are sanctioned, and what reasons. Because I would love, first of all, as a lawyer, I would be interested in looking at the charge sheet.
Okay.
Why?
Let me get back to you on
just before,
Simon Malongo.
Just before, yes. with kindness. You see, I want to look at a charge sheet. Is it true the Speaker of Parliament lied when she stated she does not own property in the UK and in the US? For me to be able to strike that balance, I would love to see property in her name with documentation. And I'm glad that the President has directed an inquiry. Let's see documentation where Anita Annette Among has property in the UK after saying no. Number 2, whether she declared that property before the IGG, because Deputy IGG has already written to say we do not have that any property in the UK declared. We do not have bank accounts in the UK declared. Now the owner is back onto those saying she has the property. If she does have the property and she did not declare, that's already an offense. Okay. And it is enough for us to even act on her.
The leadership group.
Now, I speak with caution, knowing that Parliamentary Commission reports to Kasese, which I currently chair by the grace of God. But I'm saying, I'm putting those ifs with evidence before us that actually she has property. She never declared. She lied. The next question you would even ask, I don't know if she lied, why would she even lie? That the Speaker of Parliament has a flat on some street in London or in England. First of all, I mean, I would expect somebody to have that kind of money. If it is stolen, that's a second offense. And I would be interested as Chair Kasese to look at the documentation and operations of Parliamentary Commission.
Well, we're moving 2 things concurrently, and one was, of course, the issue concerning the sanctions against the former Deputy Chief of Defense Forces, Peter Welu. That is coming.
But is there a command in the UPDF? Is there a line of command?
That's what I wanted to ask, because as somebody, an officer who was in the field, you know, being a military man, there is a chain of control, of command. So I have a feeling, I don't know whether this could be right, that the issue of Kasese is not going to die down today, tomorrow,
but is it the only one?
Or even ever.
Patrick, what happened to Mukura, the massacres in Mukura?
I think before we widen it, yes. I think your question is clear. The 2 elements which are concurrent, I can start with the Kasese. As I said, whether there was excessive use of excessive force or proportionate force, that's another matter. But I can tell you that there were events that developed gradually that led to that climax of the action against the palace. And it's unfortunate that somebody has photographic memory, but is trying to play a certain selected line of an argument. When you have the gazetted law enforcement officers who are supposed to be respected and listened to, being attacked and being killed, we actually lost about 30 officers in that short duration. And these attacks were being done by people who were calling themselves Kirumira Mtima, meaning they're resolved, over-resolved people, nationalists, patriotic nationalists of that area. And this challenge was actually an outright challenge to the state law and order machinery. That's one. Secondly, there was the issue of training, recruitment and training that was going on. And all this did not just happen in the dark. There were a lot of engagements between the government and the palace. And these engagements did not bear any fruit. Then also to say that even if it was an idea of secession, there was no problem with it. I mean, I know as a lawmaker that we know constitutionality of a government is to maintain the sovereignty and integrity of its territory and as a country. So if anything threatens the constitutional order and even the territorial integrity of that country, it calls for alarm. And of course, as you said, partly, rightly, that if you want to secede, you can secede. There are processes and procedures you can follow. But you cannot have an intent, for example, use certain irregular means against law to say that you can now secede. You can take up arms, or you can use some irregular means, and you think that can be.
So, but the whole issue, Honorable Simon Mulongo, is the process of using conventional weapons, battle wagons, against cultural guards who are armed with spears. Among them, you have UPDF officers who are guarding the king. That could have been your listening post to understand what military assets they have that are threatening a conventional army.
Are you telling me that, as a colleague here is using his security expertise to say that we had people who were listening in, and exactly that? They were not there to stop the king. They were there to provide, to give him security. But if he was doing some ultra-vires things that they're not supposed, what do they have done other than listening and reporting? So we're talking about whether he had or he don't have security, but the motives, the intents, the plans. And then whether the government was able to adduce this evidence in court, I also know that a lot of negotiations happened. Elders, religious leaders, and so on, that went on until recently when the government had to stand off. Okay. But I want to go to the issue of...
the speaker, briefly before we go take a break, yes.
Yeah, to me, the issue of sanctions, I want to agree partly with my colleague. It can happen, but to me, I question the issue of our sovereignty. That if something is happening here and you have institutions that can handle such matters, including those who are already in courts of law, that now they should pronounce themselves from another country. And to me, moreover, on the things that have very little to do with economics between us, between those individuals and those Western powers. Because if somebody has a house in London, or you have some £10,000 on an account, you use it for paying fees, surely, and you say that's worthy meeting sanctions, that can only create negativity between us and such Western powers. It doesn't help at all.
Honorable
It drives us away from our cordial and very good relationship we have with them than actually cementing it.
Simon Mulongo and Honorable Medadi Sagona, gentlemen, hold on to your points because we're going to take a break, and on the spot we'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching On the Spot. My name is Patrick Amara. My guests tonight are Honorable Medad Segona, Member of Parliament representing Busiro East, and we have a security and international relations consultant, Mr. Simon Mulongo. You know, the President wrote a letter writing to the Right Honorable Anita Mong, trying to get the details of whether she has property in the United Kingdom. That alone was also copied to the IGG and I think the Minister of Foreign Affairs. What is the implication of that letter?
Well, I think that is the right thing to do. That if there are suspicions or allegations, you go to the bottom of it, then you take action. But you have people who sit in their own...
Which action?
It could be prosecution, could it be dismissal from a job or duty, or I mean, it depends on where the officer is.
That could only be a problem if the money is gotten illegally or if they were not declared.
Exactly. There are many dimensions to it. As long as there is crime that can be confirmed, then you can take action. But here are these Western darlings whose concepts of principles of natural justice and sovereignty and all this are the ones coming up with the very funny activities. One, trying to get people who are already in courts and trying to sanction them over the same things against which they're in court. They're the same people who cannot deal with us. You know, they make laws that should affect us as if we're part of the constituent components. In other words, we're a third province of theirs. And three, that as if we don't have institutions to do it. Because I'll be happy for them to say, as the Honorable Segona was saying, that there should have been 30 people. Why 5? I mean, I've been happy to say that we're going after the 5, the 25, because the 5 are already being tackled. But they're not saying that. They're going after some selected people. We don't know why. We don't even the process they underwent to determine whether so and so is guilty. And then they begin pronouncing themselves. So to me, I find that very intriguing. So to me, the president's writing is to say, let's go to the bottom of this matter.
You know,
let's confirm whether there is evidence about these people having investments outside there, to which those governments are springing action against.
Tonight you sounded like a man they used to call Mr. Fix-It in Nairobi.
And if it was the case, then of course, if she's guilty of that, then we'll know what else that can be done. Of course, as he said, the government can crack the whip, depending on what office.
Honorable Simon Mulongo, tonight you sounded like Mr. Fix-It, but it appears you may not be able to fix this. What could be the political ramification of such a move, Honorable Segona?
First of all, before I go to the political ramifications, first, for me, I don't even mind the double jeopardy. Because corruption is a very, very serious offense. It's a serious vice to be attached onto somebody. So, one, I agree with Simon that probably for those who are in court, if I were the British or American government, I would be very happy to wait for the outcome. With or without a conviction, I would still come up with the sanction if I'm satisfied, because the sanction is not a legal process. It's a political process. And I do not have a problem with sanction. Why I went for, or coined substantive justice, is you must be, or you should be right to begin with. You should be right that this person is actually corrupt. By giving me particulars in the charge sheet and saying, I am sanctioning this person for corruption for having stolen the following. Now, if the thing is Mabati, and someone behaved like a Karachuna, say for stealing 30 pieces of Mabati for the vulnerable poor, as they called it, in which case I would have a huge list of this from this government. 2, for violation of human rights, in which case I would expect Eweru, Kakabajenda, who is this man Kandiho, etc. There are people who were detained from my party, NUP, who came out limping. There are those that disappeared. Which greater violation is there on earth? than killing. We lost young men and women during elections. So those that killed them should have been sanctioned if it is an issue of human rights. Then there are those that are missing. Where are they?
The Chibalamas.
The Chibalamas. We don't see them. Somebody must take responsibility. Somebody who was detained at CPS, police says, we have him. CMI goes, picks that person, and the person disappears. Until now, somebody must take responsibility. This lady called Annette Among, first she was my student. I mean, if she stole, I would be the very first person to slap her. Now, come to this young man, my brother, my son, now having married my daughter, Moses Magogo. Let me know what he stole, other than marrying Anita Among, so that we are convinced, by the way, in this fight, they're just helping us. We want to join the fight, actually to lead the fight. Now, when it comes to the local perspective, back home, I did tell you, if somebody commits crime, prosecute.
But first pause there. These two people, with all respect, that you call son and daughter, there has been a display of glamour and pomp that I really do not understand, especially when one was gifting the other a top-of-the-range Range Rover on the steps of Parliament and you guys coming in like cheerleaders. Well, I mean, you leave that thing for another group of people, not...
Are you jealous
I'm not
of them?
saying they shouldn't, you shouldn't give a gift, but the manner in which you give it, in public with pomp and glamour, on the steps of Parliament, with members of Parliament like cheerleaders, no.
Okay, now I will educate you on this. Voltaire said, I disapprove of what you say, but I would defend to death your right to say it. Does that constitute crime?
No. I'm
Good.
saying, no, the perception. You know, the world also runs on perception.
The difference between you, Patrick, and I is that I don't get excited. Okay?
Oh, there's a lot of excitement with your colleagues down here.
No. Listen, I would not display my love the way those children of mine displayed it. I would do it different. First, there is nothing fundamentally or otherwise wrong with the Speaker of Parliament.
And I haven't said it was wrong.
Listen.
And I haven't said it's wrong.
Listen.
Giving a gift is entirely fine.
Absolutely.
But I find it,
I know.
The pomp and glamour, I think you can leave it for another another group of people.
I know she can afford.
Yes, she can.
I do not want to be prejudiced by her having done what I would not have done. Okay? But if she stole, even if she stole a bottle of mineral water, I would want to go against her. Now these the Western people who have a microscopic eye, and I trust their microscopic eye, owe us a duty of showing us, by the way you're there, somebody stole money here. I would support a prosecution. And by the way, I want to be on record. If Anita Tutu, who is Lugorobi, Nandutu, Nabanja, who is this, the vice president, Alupo, etc., stole our money, we want them prosecuted publicly. But at the bottom of it, we want evidence. How difficult is it for me to know that Anita Among owns property X, especially in London? It's not like where you go to Fort Portal and somebody says in Karugutu somewhere, someone has a makeshift etc. It is different. That world is different. We want to know. I even met her on the steps of Parliament and asked her, do you own property in London? She looked at me and said, no. If it exists, I donate it. By the way, if it exists, the British owe us a duty of auctioning that property and giving us back that money. But that is on the following conditions. One, that she stole the money. Two, that she did not declare before IGG. Now that would be IGG. I do not support the idea of destroying institutions. If I were Museveni, I certainly cannot be, I would have quietly talked to IGG and say, can you investigate this one and take action? Because now when you write to her, I saw Museveni's letter, and then do what? He's powerless. He has no power to remove the speaker. Maybe he can influence a prosecution like you said, but does he need to do? If you have IGG, you have DPP, you have the police, the speaker is not immune, you can prosecute. So I don't like the idea that, oh, he simply he writes, you told me you don't have property. So, you know, it is best to say, the IGG saying, Madam Speaker, from your declaration, you told me you have no property anywhere outside. We have learned that you have property in London.
And there's evidence.
The IGG would go even quietly to the British High Commission and say, Madam Commissioner, can I have evidence? But if not, through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, through the embassy, the IGG can still access records from London to show that, hey, this lady has property, even if she did not steal that property, by the way. But she did not declare it. You saw what happened to my brother Ken Luchams.
Yeah,
yes. So I think at the end of the day, for me, the idea that people can be sanctioned is a good one for accountability and transparency. I would be very happy to see evidence against Anita Annett among the Speaker of Parliament and even those other ones. Away from this thing called sovereignty, which Simon is flagging around, by the way, there is no conflict between sanctions and sovereignty. Because we're only saying, don't come to our borders, don't cross our border. We don't want you. Even if you are not corrupt, Patrick, a state can tell you, we do not want
deny a visa.
You. We will not give you visa. That's why you need visa to enter a particular state. I think something has been flagged around.
Okay.
Wait, if something has been flagged around with people saying, no, Anita is targeted because of passing the Anti-Homosexuality Act. Now, one, it is possible because to them, that one is also right. By passing that law, they might think, yes, you violated rights. And they would be perfectly entitled to say, don't come, because for us that is a right to us, and for you don't believe in it, I wouldn't have a problem. Be clear if that's the reason. If it's not the reason, and the reason is theft and plunder, give us evidence so that we can also take it up from there.
Okay, the anti-homosexuality law.
And I understand the British High Commissioner said we have no duty to prove.
Do you think Uganda, and in this case, the Right Honourable Anita Among and other people, are beginning to pay because of the anti-homosexuality law?
Well, first of all, you start on a social note, and my good brother, my brother-in-law responded. I think that was a private function, really. The speaker...
You want to go back on the birthday? Okay.
Yes, the speaker had the right to do it anywhere. But of course, as you said, being so glamorous and in public, it could have attracted a number of...
created a different perception.
Of course, different perceptions. And that could also earn her some jabs from some quarters. Perhaps should have chosen to do it quite privately elsewhere. Regarding, I agree with the comrade Segona that people who commit crimes should be punished. And that's the purpose of the law. And in the Constitution, we made sure we state categorically that nobody will be penalized unless for a crime that is defined. So as long as you commit that crime, you should be punished, including corruption cases and all that. But
indeed, after charging Chitutu and Nandutu, Museveni fired them.
Yes, he fired them because he had that power.
I think he was just tired of
And
them.
I think the president had capacity to also cause changes anywhere, even if people have immunity like those in parliament. There are ways of where the president can crack a whip. So I think the president has the capacity to act as and when he can deem it, of course in line with the law. The issue of sovereignty, I still insist, because this sovereignty has developed after Westphalian state creation. Countries are sovereign to the extent to which they're supposed to relate with one another. There are avenues. Unless collective laws are done by multilateral organizations like United Nations, like ESO, or conventions and protocols to which we become signatories. But for you, an independent state, begin making laws just targeting other states. And these tactics, we've seen them growing. I remember when we were developing the Rome Statute, we're together with the US, for example.
That created the ICC.
Yes, they created the ICC, we're together with the US. Even to the point of signing, we're together with the US. Then immediately after that, they backtracked and said, we're not part of it. Then they came around forcing us to support them, to support that they quit. And if you were to, it was not just persuasive, it was coercive. And so really, at the end of it all, they are now targeting some countries.
Were we persuaded to support them?
Using the same course they didn't want to
they really coerced us to support them to leave. And that we should not challenge them. Yeah. And they said, if you do not, then we're going to pull the 1, 2, 3, 7 strings. So, the point I'm making is that some of these laws that are done by sovereign states against others, targeting other countries, is something we should not accept. That kind of order does not necessarily help to build the international order system.
So, Honorable Segona, so in this case, in the defense of our sovereignty and of our national values, how should we, as Uganda, or the government, or the state, how should it be responding to these issues?
You know, when you were talking about the 10-point programs, which metamorphosed into 15 at some point and even beyond, you forgot to mention that one of the promises was to give us a self-sustaining economy. Now, if after 37 years you have failed to create a self-sustaining economy, but you do not stop there, you go beyond that by creating a dependent economy, which is what Genome 7 has gifted us with in the last 37 years. You have no space on the table of men. As an old African, I know that there are people we would look at and say, Kamara, you are not qualified to sit on the table of men. Why? Because you've not washed your hands. Genome 7 found the government owing, I think it was 2.6 billion in aid. Was it $2.6 billion?
Our debt?
Yes, our debt then. Or 2.6 million or billion dollars?
It couldn't have been billion.
Yes. And today, our national debt stands at a whooping $97 billion. And with that economy, how do you expect to speak to the US while standing and not kneeling? They can do anything. He has just said they were not even convinced, but confused and coerced to support the US, to deviate from what it had persuaded them to do. So to me, sovereignty does not even cross my mind when I'm talking about these things. But also don't use sovereignty to loot and rape and rob a sovereign state. 2, don't use or flag sovereignty to violate rights. As a student of international law, we say that matters human rights transcend borders. It is time for people to realize that the countries have turned into a global village. It's as small and as closed as you would think of it. When you loot, when you kill and maim and violate rights, the world can become narrower on you. So for me, I support the idea of sanctions, used not selectively. 2, used rightly. 3, aid us, give us the assistance to fight the corrupt by providing us with the evidence. I saw General Museveni in Kololo one day telling Honorable Betkamia, you leave my corrupt, because when they steal and they keep here the money, it is okay, they will develop the economy. And that tone, I also saw that tone.
So some people are not learning.
Yes, I also saw that tone when he was saying, why would somebody go and invest elsewhere? For me, I have no problem with somebody having his own money and investing somewhere. Actually, to me, investing outside is a vote of no confidence in the economy. Museveni should be targeting his own officials before they are even targeted by the US, UK, etc., who are investing outside. Politically, he should be dealing with them to say, why are you telling the world that we are not capable of managing your money? And then they give him the answer I would give him, that you have actually failed to manage the economy. We do not have trust in your economy. We do not have trust in your stability because you have decided, you have clung on to power. You don't want to leave, which is a recipe for disaster. So that's why we are running away. That explains the capital flight. So they would tell him those stories. But how is he going to deal with them? First of all, does Museveni himself own property outside the country? We should investigate.
I think...
do his children own property outside the country?
I think the point that we're discussing is about sovereignty, and I insist. You see, when states became sovereign, that notion and concept is what makes our international relations subsist where they are. If we don't be consistent with what we define and put in place as international system, then we're going to mess it. Then we're going to bring back the law of the jungle, which we are running away from. It's like another power should just come and mess another one, simply because you think that sovereignty...
But Simon, the United States is only saying, you are not welcome to our country. You're not going to play.
I wish it was. I wish it was.
That's what they're saying. Don't come.
Yes, I wish it was, but it's not.
Is that a threat to the sovereignty of Uganda?
Yes, it is. As long as they target your institutions, because these are people who are in our institutions, and the institutions that make us what we are, we must take some interest. And particularly when we know that there are some other undercurrents. We read intelligence. We know what they discuss in their closed doors, most of the things that they do discuss. And then now they want to go after some things for purposes of excuse. But there are other reasons. We must take some interest and be concerned. But as I said, I agree with the Honorable Segona that any crime should be penalized. There's no doubt about it. But let's come to the issue of the 10-point program. Under no clause, phrase, comma, or word did the 10-point program say within 7 weeks, 7 years, 10 years. When we pledged to have certain things attained, it was an objective dependent on the operating environment.
But it only increased. That's the problem.
No. But the point I'm saying that, yes, there are some things
from
which
2.6 to 97.
No. But what is the other side of it?
Actually,
because a balance sheet should be seen from two sides.
You don't agree that corruption has increased?
It has increased.
Yeah. So
that public debt has increased.
So is sin. When God created man, sin was about two people. When Jesus came...
How many other people were there?
Of course, there were two people. It is Adam and Eve, according to that theory.
So it was 100% sin.
It was two people, theory, but also the number of the numbers of people who were sinning were just two. But the numbers has increased.
Those were the only ones there.
So just a minute.
The sinners were
100%. Yeah, but despite the fact that if you take that percentage, then it's much less today.
Okay.
So the issue is that we did not pledge to have that done within a certain period. Even medicine came into play as a cause to eradicate illnesses from society. But we're having challenges growing and growing. That doesn't mean we dismiss medicine.
All right,
we cannot.
gentlemen.
So I think that it is something that we should fight, we should intensify. If I was the one person, I would perhaps increase measures than what we are taking now. But of course, it is something that is very elusive, but that should not be an excuse whatsoever.
Okay, gentlemen, in the interest of time, I'm going to ask you, Honorable Segona, to give us your concluding remark on the show tonight.
Well, thank you, Patrick. One, for me, I support sanctions against errant people. In a country which has been suffocated for 37 years, close to 40 years, suffocated and making us helpless, we need an international arm. We only urge our partners, one, to be consistent in their actions so that they are not seen. We do not have to have voices like, oh no, these sanctions result from passing the Anti-Homosexuality Act. Number two, be neater. Neater meaning put the evidence across, act on it, but that evidence aids us also to deal with our people. Number three, for those that have been sanctioned, first I feel for them, there should be some legal recourse, legal redress somewhere. There are lawyers across the globe who are specialists in international law. They could think of exploring means of accessing those lawyers to even put up cases, because when someone attaches a crime of corruption, I mean, it dents you. So if I were them, one of the things I would look at is the possibility of suing those governments, including in their own courts, to say, I do not mind barring me from entering your borders, but I care about my name.
Maligning my name.
Maligning my name, you were wrong. Finally, yes, you talked about my daughter's glamour, etc. It is a style. I may not do it, but that shouldn't stop somebody else. As Simon said, perhaps some people will take offense with it and use it to fight you. If you saw the tweet by, who is this boy, this man, his brother, Zaire, something like Zaire.
Zaire tweets?
Yeah, Zaire, or maybe somebody tweets for him. He posted 7 years later, etc. And this is actually the second one. The first time he tweeted about Anita Among and said, we can't accept this corruption. To me, there is some good infighting within NRM. And for me, I'm happy to have that infight because it's an inroad for us when they do, when they fight. When somebody tweets from the first family or close to the first family and is tweeting against the Speaker of Parliament of Uganda, for me, I'm against. I'm very, very happy because I know, yes, at least we are doing something. Now that they are fighting from within.
You don't want to interrupt.
I do not, yes, the British say if your enemy is making a mistake, do not interfere. So, colleagues out there, as these people are fighting amongst themselves, I see Alupo fighting, Anita and Nabaja fighting. For me, I'm very happy when I see them. At an institutional level, and at the level of a statesman, yes, I'm not happy. But at the level of a person who wants to get power from this same group, I'm always excited to see them fight.
Okay. By the way, have you signed the Sekiku already?
No, I have not signed. I have multiple reasons, but one of them I'll tell you is that I chair Kasese. Kasese oversees the operations of the Parliamentary Commission. I would be very much conflicted or prejudiced if the matter came before me, and I have already indicated where I belong. I have heard voices that actually we passed the budget. I remember at that time, yes, I was not in the country. I had my daughter in hospital. If it is true, and I'm investigating that, if it is true that we actually passed the budget and now we are signing, it might put us in some kind of conundrum. I'm again conflicted because my party, my president has already pronounced himself on that matter, that people should sign the petition. I have clearly said I will not sign.
Okay. Because of the reasons you've given?
Yes.
All right.
And more.
Okay. Okay. Very briefly, Simon, your parting shot.
Yes, I still insist on the issue of undue means, where we pursue justice in a manner of those sanctions. People who commit crimes should be punished, but must be subjected to a proper due process, a process that is transparent, a process that is clear, that people can be able to defend themselves. But the nature of sanctions from the West are just a stab in the back. And to me, they're targeting to weaken our institutions. They have different reasons, but they're going after our key actors in certain institutions just to weaken us. And we know this is part of the greater social imperialism policies that the West wants to make against certain countries that are growing. And so I do not accept such approaches. Two, the issue of my brother saying that in-house fighting. I'm not sure whether, yes, NRM is a dynamic organization. We have a lot of diverse views within our organization, but that doesn't mean that we are not as coherent as he may not want to hear. It is even worse in opposition parties. It is so bad that we wonder whether we're going to salvage the opposition, because we also need an opposition that is organized. That because these are supposed to be governments in the waiting, in the wings.
It's okay.
But
you will oppose us.
But if you have people like now the current parties, that are just horrible.
Did you hear Chairman say his mission was to make sure there's no opposition?
Well,
and here you're saying you want opposition.
Yes, the issue
you're not
is that,
a very good student of your chairman.
No, I'm a very good student, but I think the messaging, the way you understood, is different.
Okay.
Otherwise, if we did not want opposition, they wouldn't be there.
Honorable
but
Simon
the law
Mulongo.
Provides for them, and we must respect
Honorable Simon Mulongo, Honorable
Yes.
Medad Segona, gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for the time you've given us for your submissions. These are very, very explosive areas to get into, to navigate. But we are Ugandans, and we have to protect our sovereignty. We have to love Uganda, fight for Uganda, and root for Uganda. But if there is any evidence, any grain of evidence that the United States can put forward that there was a crime committed, then as Ugandans we have to make sure and condemn that crime. But in the meantime, we are for Uganda, we fight for Uganda, we root for Uganda. Good night and God bless Uganda.